Darren Bevan, Jennifer Jacobson. I'm going to allow the floor to be yours. I've got a write-up on them and their backgrounds. We haven't had you speak here before, so we're really glad to have you. Thank you very much. Go ahead and take the floor.
Well, so let's just real quick. We do have Jennifer and I practice in association law. Practice in association law. Our firm limits its practice. We can't say we specialize, but we limit our practice to only assisting and advising boards of directors and assisting associations and governance. So today we're going to hit on some high points. This is a very exciting bill, Senate Bill 563, which came out this year, going into effect January 1st. This has a very significant impact on boards of directors and how you conduct your business. And I guess the joke I always say is, how many people have email in the room? Did you raise your hands? Come on, everybody raise your hand. Everybody has email now, right? So everybody's got email these days. And a lot of boards were using email on a very regular and consistent basis to make their decisions, right? So where on earth do these laws come from? These laws always come from an example being presented to the legislature of something that somebody doesn't like. And this something that somebody didn't like was they felt that their board of directors would show up to a board meeting and basically rubber stamp a series of decisions that had all been made prior to the meeting. Basically, the concept was the directors were emailing each other and discussing, deliberating, and deciding all issues of association business outside the presence of the members. And so we have a legislator that says, you know what, and actually it's a local legislator that was one of the sponsors of this bill, sat around saying, you know what, we need to change this. And the big changes and the big push is no more emails. And this is something I've been talking to boards about for about 3 years, 4 years, that this was coming down the pipe. The main thing is the emails are dead, right? Just have that as your starting point. We're not going to email each other to discuss, deliberate, or decide anything. In a minute, we're going to talk about all the exceptions to that general rule. But right now, just have that in the back of your mind. We don't email about stuff. Now, we can email information, right? We can ask questions of management. We can present ideas to be discussed at a board meeting, but we're not going to discuss those by email or by a series of emails between the directors. So, key thing here, the big takeaway is all of your decisions are now going to be made at a board meeting, right? And anybody here familiar with the Brown Act board? Okay, so I'm going to be picking on you a lot today. The Open Meeting Act is modeled on the Brown Act, and it was always more liberal than the Brown Act. The Brown Act is a very, very stringent document or piece of legislation that puts extreme limits on these boards and how they make decisions. But the big takeaway is you're going to be making all decisions at a board meeting. Now, what type of board meeting you're going to be making at is going to be the next decision, right? Is it something that we have to do in the open session at a regular board meeting where the members are present? Or is it something that is done in an executive session? And then in either case, is it just a regular notice board meeting, or is it an emergency board meeting, right? So that's, always think about, okay, so we have two types of board meetings. The open meeting where all the members are there and we allow an open forum, and then there's executive session. And then there's the notice issue, right? How are we going to notice the board meeting? Is it going to be an emergency, or is it going to be a standard notice meeting? The other big thing here is unanimous written consent. Has everybody done one of those? It's basically, there's a whole bunch of different names for them, but it's basically all of the board agrees in writing to a particular action being taken, or by email. That was how most boards were doing it. They'd all just say, we got the landscape contract, the price for the repairs is X. Does everybody agree? And everybody emails back saying, yes, we all agree. And then the manager says, great, I will execute the contract on behalf of the board, and we'll go ahead and proceed with the landscape. You cannot do that, right? That's part of the email decision-making power. Under the Corporations Code, associations have always been able to do these unanimous written consents. You can agree to the action without having to meet, so long as everyone agrees. You cannot do that anymore, right? You have to make a decision at a board meeting, in some type of board meeting. So there's one big thing. We've just talked about all these things I told you are absolutes, right? You're going to make all your decisions at a board meeting. But then I'm going to tell you now about the exception to the rule that can be used to drive a truck through that absolute. There's this thing called an emergency, right? How many associations have ever had a fire, water leak, something that required immediate attention. Everybody should have their hands up. Everybody's had some sort of immediate action being required. And the legislature recognized that sometimes you guys have to meet quickly, right? And so what do you have to decide? What is an emergency? Well, we're now given guidance as to what is an emergency. And the emergency is circumstances that could not have been reasonably foreseen. And that's you and I, we can sit there, one person's idea of what couldn't be foreseen and another person's idea of what couldn't be foreseen may be completely different. But the board needs to act in good faith, acting in the best interest of the association when you decide, yes, this issue is an emergency. The other thing that it has to be, and this is key, requires immediate attention, and I'm going to really emphasize this, and possible action by the board. One of the big things that comes up is the director says, well, I don't think this is an emergency because it doesn't require the action of the board. Well, it's not. It doesn't have to require action of the board. It's just possible action of the board. The emergency is we need to sit down and talk about this to figure out what we need to do as an association. So it doesn't say that if you agree that there is an emergency that you agree to all these other actions occur. You just agree to sit down with the other directors on a shortened basis to talk about what the problem the association is facing and what the best options are to address it. So don't think of emergency as being, it must, we have to make a decision today. No, it's what do we have to do? Do we even have to make a decision? Because the key to it is it's possible action. The other part of this too is, which is kind of the smaller part, is the providing notice would be impractical. In other words, we don't have time to go out and post notices on the common area and to mail notices to all the members because, the big example I've been having, I've had so many fires in associations lately. We've been having to deal with those on a regular basis, and that's a clear-cut case of an emergency. The board has to meet. They have to discuss what we're going to do. And then the last thing is always going to be that you need to file your consents in the meeting minutes. So you have to prove, right, that's always crucial in all association actions, because when you get sued over this, it's going to be 2 years from now, and everybody will have forgotten, did everybody consent to that? So we need to be able to document the consents, right, in writing, that everybody agreed, and whether that's a series of emails where everybody's emailed showing that they agreed, or whether you do a separate document where each director shows up and signs or signs and faxes it back. Every association is going to have to decide how you guys as a board want to deal with this. But the main thing is we need to be able to document that every director agreed there was an emergency and that we had to sit down and talk about it.
So it's unanimous.
Unanimous. To talk about it, right? Keep that in mind. It's unanimous to talk about it, not unanimous as to any decision. When the ultimate decision is made, it's just a simple majority of the directors that are present, right? So you're looking at your documents. What is our quorum requirement? How many directors are required for action to be taken? So what does it mean? This is the other big change. And for many years, I always got to say to people, gosh, the Open Meeting Act is very restrictive. But everybody recognizes that as homeowners that are volunteering to serve on your board and get paid nothing to do it and receive no thank you from anyone, it just doesn't make sense to require something like that the board cannot, 3 members, say you have a 5-director board, that 3 members of that board of directors cannot go to a barbecue together, right? It would be unreasonable in my opinion. Well, they changed it. The new law says a congregation majority of the members at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any item of business that is within the authority of the board. It used to be that it was scheduled business of the board. If you got a majority of the directors sitting someplace talking about something that was scheduled to be heard, which meant that you could go to the barbecue, and 3 of you could sit there and maybe say things like, gosh, the landscape's not looking so good these days. Well, don't have that conversation anymore. If there are 3 directors sitting at the barbecue, do not discuss anything about the association. It is unlikely that anyone will sue you, but there is the possibility that a member could say, you know what, they're having an illegal meeting. They are violating the Open Meeting Act. And we laugh, but I actually have one association that has been in litigation for 2 years over this issue. It has cost them a small fortune. And the key thing to remember about this, and it's the thing we don't normally like to talk about, is this is one of the few areas in California law where they have what's called a statutory one-sided attorney's fees clause. If the association violates the Open Meeting Act and a homeowner sues you for that violation and they prevail, in the lawsuit, and they have a court that says, yes, this owner prevailed in the lawsuit, that owner is entitled to their attorney's fees. If the